Hello everyone, I am Dr. Kiranmayi, Area Chair and Assistant Professor, Digital Transformation and Operations, Department of Management Studies, School of Business, Aditya University. And in this present lecture, I am going to talk about probability, the concept of probability and the various areas where this concept of probability is applied and the terminologies related to probability and various laws of probability, and finally what the theories of probability. So, these are the concepts which I am going to discuss in this present lecture. And coming to the concept of probability. So, what is probability? So, statistics as we have discussed, as we have understood in the previous lectures, that statistics is prediction of future based upon the historical events. Based upon the past data, the statistician will try to identify the patterns of the historical data, based upon the historical data, and he is going to predict the future, that is what has happened and what is going to happen. So, in this process, there may be sometimes the decision maker may come across with various kinds of situations. He may be able to predict the future, that is what we say, which is uncertain. So, we all of us know that future is uncertain, but to some extent we can guess, that is the chance of occurring of that particular event. 100% we cannot guarantee that a particular event is going to happen, but to some extent we can quantify the chance of occurrence of an event in the future. So, based upon that we can make decisions whether that decision is going to be good or bad, whether that decision is to be taken or not to be taken. So, in such a way, this concept of probability is very much helpful, and probability is nothing but which quantifies the chance factor, that is which quantifies the occurrence or happening of an uncertain event which may happen in the future. So, that quantification of uncertain future event is called probability. So, quantifying the chance of occurrence of an event is called probability. And probability lies, there is range of probability. Probability lies between the value 0 to 1. Suppose if I say probability of an event as 0, it means that event will never happen. So, in such a case, that is, in other words, we can also say that probability of the non-occurrence of an event is 0. Or if we calculate probability of for an event, if the value we get is 0, we can say that event is not going to happen in the future, that will never happen, we can say. And suppose if probability of an event is 1, for example, that is 100%, we can say 100%. That is, if the probability of an event is exactly 1, then we can say that the event is certain event, that is 100% chances are there, or surely that particular event is going to happen. So, this is how we can predict the value of probability. And suppose if we calculate the probability of an event and if it is 0.6, in other words, this can also be represented in terms of percentage, that is 60%. That is, if the probability of an event A is 0.6, that is, there are 60% chances that the event A will happen. So, this is how we can use or predict the value of probability. Suppose there is a cricket match which is happening between two teams. So we don't know which team is going to happen, but out of intuition or out of our intelligence or with the with the past data, that is historical data, we can predict, we can identify, we can quantify which team, we can quantify the chance of winning of a particular team based upon historical data or using our intuition or experience. We can say that is there are 60% chances, 70% chances are there that a particular team is going to win. So that is how we can make use of the concept of probability in predicting the future, which facilitates decision making. That is, whether the decision is to be taken or not to be taken, which is going to happen, which is not, which may not happen. Accordingly, decision makers can make good decisions, optimum decisions, or we can say. And suppose if we consider tossing of a coin. So when a coin is tossed, we may obtain either head or tail. But can we say that only head is going to happen? Can we say that tail is going to happen? No. So there is equal chances that both happening of either head or happening of either tail are having equal chances. So such events are also called as equally likely events, the events which has equal chance to happen. So the best example is tossing of a coin, that is occurrence of head or tail are said to be equally likely events. And so coming to the application part of the concept probability. So probability is used in different areas. So in case of weather forecasting, so that is, so we are going to get sometimes the government is going to predict and it is going to direct the concerned authorities to take proper measures in order to safeguard the lives of the people. So all this is happening, this kind of prediction is happening because of probability. So here the people, the weather forecasters, they are going to predict whether it is going to rain or and what is the speed of. So in weather forecasting also, this concept of probability is used to predict whether it is going to rain or whether it is going to be too hot, and what is the climatic condition for which it is going to be suitable, and accordingly proper measures, protective measures can be taken. So that is how probability can be used in the area of weather forecasting. And not only that, in case of insurance, so in insurance sector, many people, the decisions, majority of the decisions are taken based upon this probability, that is whether to issue the policy to a particular customer or not. So that is why normally if we observe, when we apply for taking, when we wish to take life insurance, the agent used to collect some data, certain data like age of the person who is going to take insurance, his age, his health conditions, and his or her habits. So all such information is taken. All such information is taken by the insurance agent in order to identify, in order to take the decision whether that person should be given insurance or not. Suppose if insurance is issued without taking all such information into consideration, the number of claims may, the person may have high chances of risk, and it is going to be lost to the company. So though the main aim of insurance is to provide relief during the time, tough times, right? But so insurance cannot be just like that given to all the people. So in likewise, in insurance sector, this probability concept is used, whether that person is going to have any kind of ailments in the near future? If so, what is the probability? What is the probability of for his survival, and what is the probability of his non-survival? All these things they can make such kind of decisions using the concept of probability. And also in case of betting, so in case of bettings, we can identify people who they undergo with some sort of betting. So, where out of historical data or past patterns or trends, people use it to predict that a particular team is going to win or lose. So, that is how in case of betting games also, people try to predict which team is going to win and which team is going to lose. So, there also we can see the application of probability. And the last one, decision making. So, this concept of probability is not only used in insurance sector or not only used in weather forecasting. For in business organizations, in hospital management, in education sector, wherever whatever the sector, wherever there is a situation which needs a decision making, there exists application of this probability. That is, whether to take the decision or not to take the decision, which is going to happen, which is not going to happen, and whether the firm is going to make profit. If so, what is the chance of making profit, what is the chance of making loss. So, that is how this probability, concept of probability is very much helpful in case of decision making. So, this is how we can use the concept of probability. And coming to various terminologies of probability. So, first one, random experiment. So, what is a random experiment? Random experiment is an experiment where we can predict what could be the outcomes of an event. That is, exactly we cannot say this is the outcome. Suppose if we toss a coin, we can predict, that is either head or tail is going to happen. If we toss a die, we can predict what could be the possible outcomes. That is, if we toss a die 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 or 6, among all these 6 numbers, one could be the outcome, but exactly what is the outcome that is going to happen, that we cannot say. So, the such kind of experiments in which exactly what is the outcome that is going to happen, we cannot predict, and such events or experiments are called random experiments. And the other one is outcome. So, in the area of probability, normally we use the term outcome. Outcome means the possible expected result of an experiment. So, the various results. So, all these are, one is, if we throw a die, one is one outcome, 2 can be one outcome, 6 can be one outcome. And next, event. So, what is an event? So, when we perform a random experiment, the specific outcome or set of outcomes are called events. So, all these are called 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. All these are called, one is an event of a random experiment of throwing a die. 6 is also called an event of a random experiment, that is throwing a die. So, all these are termed as events. In the next one, sample space. Suppose if I represent all these possible outcomes of a random experiment, that is throwing a die, is called, if I represent all these possible outcomes in the form of a set or the collection of all the possible outcomes of a random experiment, is called sample space. And equally likely events, as I said earlier, if we toss a coin, we may obtain, there are equal chances to happen head or tail. We cannot say that 70 more chances are there for happening of head and less chances are there for happening of tail. We cannot say. Both are having equal chances to happen. Likewise, when we throw a die, so there are equal chances to happen any number from 1 to 2. All these events are said to be equally likely events, since all the events are having equal chance to happen. And the other one is mutually exclusive events. So, which events we can say, or which events we call as mutually exclusive events? The events which do not happen at the same time. The events which never happen at the same point of time. So, that is, in other words, we can also understand in that way that if one event happens, the other event will not happen. That is, if happening of one event makes non-happening of the other event, then such events are said to be mutually exclusive events. Again, we can take the example of tossing of a die. That is, if the tail happens, head will not happen. If head happens, tail will not happen. In such a case, tail and head are said to be mutually exclusive events, because both events will never happen at the same time. Likewise, in case of die also. Likewise, in case of pack of cards also. Suppose if we want to pick up, select a particular card, say for example, face card, a king. So, if you want to select a king, you can select only king. Okay. So, that is it restricts the happening of the other event. And coming to the next concept, that is laws of probability. So, these are the laws of probability. So, while calculating or while using the concept of probability, these are the rules one should keep in mind. There are certain laws which we need to understand and follow. So, the first thing, law of non-negativity, that is, the probability can never be negative. Probability value can never be negative. That is, suppose if probability of an event A, I say as minus 0.2, that is minus 20% chances are there to for the happening of an event, which is meaningless. Therefore, the probability of an event can never be negative. And the second law, law of certainty. So, that is, if I say probability of an event is 1, that is, that event is certain event, we can say. Or otherwise, probability of the sample space, that is, in the previous case I have shown you the sample space as contains, if in case of throw of a die, the sample space contains 6 events. That is, if we add up the happening of all the events, I am going to obtain 1, that is probability of happening of 1, probability of happening of 2, probability of happening of 3 plus probability of up to 6. If I sum up the probability of happening of all these 6 events, it is going to give me 1. That is nothing but probability of the sample space S. And the probability of the empty set is 0. So, if I say the probability of an event is 0, that is, it is uncertain, purely uncertain event. That is, if probability of an event is 0, we can say that event will never happen, which is impossible event. We can say the event is impossible event. If probability of an event is 0, we can say it is impossible event. And the other one is other law of probability, that is mutually exclusive events. So, mutually exclusive events means the events which will not happen together at the same time. That is, if one event happens, the other event will never happen. So, in such a case, probability of both the events can be summed up. P of A plus P of B is going to give the probability of mutually exclusive event. If we want to know what is the probability of happening of A or happening of B, if we want to find out probability of happening of either A or B, in such a case, by summing up the probabilities, individual probabilities of both events A and B, we can obtain, and this formula we can use when the two events are mutually exclusive events. And the next one is law of addition. So, the total probability can be obtained by summing up the individual probabilities. So, that is what we call law of addition. Suppose if we want to know if the two events are not mutually exclusive events, then we can use this formula, that is P of A union B is equal to P of A plus P of B minus P of A intersection B, and this is how we can make use of addition theorem of probability when the two events are non-mutually exclusive events. But if the two events are mutually exclusive, then their intersection will be 0, since both events together will never happen. That is, if the events are mutually exclusive, and if the events are mutually exclusive, then probability is 0. Therefore, then P of A union B is equal to just sum of both the events. But if the two events are not mutually exclusive, then this formula is applicable. So, in case of for calculating probabilities, we can also use this law of addition and law of multiplication. Suppose if we want to find whether the probability of happening of two events, that is P of A intersection B, which are independent events, that is, the occurrence of A is not going to impact the occurrence of B. Likewise, occurrence of B or happening of the event B is not going to impact the occurrence of A. Then the probability of happening of both the events can be obtained by multiplying individual probabilities of both the events. Suppose if the events are dependent and independent events, then we have another probability which is called conditional probability. So, conditional probability comes into picture when when two events are dependent and independent events. Suppose if A is independent event and if B is dependent event on A, that is, happening of B is dependent upon A, that is, happening of A is going to impact happening of B. Suppose if A never happens, B also never happen, we can say, since B is dependent upon the happening of the event A. So, B happens if and only if A happens, or we can say B happens only after the occurrence of A. Then the event B is said to be dependent event. So, in case of such kind of situation, probability of happening of both events can be obtained using multiplication theorem, that is probability of A into probability of B given A. So, this is how we can use multiplication theorem of probability. If both the events are mutually exclusive and both are independent, then probability of happening of both the events is given by A into P of B. And the next one, the last property, complementary property. Suppose there is an event A. Alternatively, accordingly, we have A complement. A complement. So, A complement is completely opposite to happening of. Suppose if I say A denotes happening of the, if P of A denotes happening of the event A, then I can say P of A complement denotes non-happening of the event A, which is quite opposite. Therefore, if I want to know probability of A complement, that is given by 1 minus P of A. That is, total probability is 1 and P of A is probability of happening of A, and if I subtract happening of the event A from the total probability 1, it gives the probability of non-happening of the event A. So, this is how we can, we have to follow and we can make use of all these laws of probability while predicting the future or while making the decisions. And the last concept of this lecture, that is theories of probability. So, we have mainly 3 theories, or we can say 3 approaches. So, first one, classical approach. Classical approach which forms the basis for equally likely outcomes. So, that is when there are events which has in a random experiment, if we come across with the events which has equal chance to happen. So, in such a case, we are going to use this classical approach for calculation of the probability. And relative frequency, suppose an experiment is conducted, for example, tossing of a die is an experiment, is a random experiment, and if I repeat the same experiment, say for example for 50 times, first time, second time, third time and up to 50. So, for example, if I have conducted a random experiment continuously, repeatedly with the same die for 50 times, suppose if first time I may obtain head, second time again head, third time tail and so on, head, head, head and so on, and the last is tail, say for example. So, this is how I may record the outcome of each experiment. Therefore, now I have 50 outcomes at my hand. So, there is a random experiment which consists of 50 trials. So, 50 times I have repeated same experiment with the same coin and I have recorded 50 outcomes of all the 50 experiments. Suppose if I want to calculate probability of head, so one may ask me what I am going to obtain if I toss this coin, either head or tail. Out of this experiment I can say for example, I have totally conducted 50 times. Out of 50 times I may obtain head for 20. Out of 50 results, there may be 20 times I have obtained head, that is 20 by 50, that is 2 by 5, that is 0.4, that is 40% chances are there for the occurrence of head. So, if I predict the future by using the results of an experiment, then such kind of approach is called relative frequency approach. Here also I am predicting, estimating the happening of an event, but based upon the results of an experiment which is repeatedly conducted, and out of the results of that experiment and observation, I am going to calculate or predict the happening of an event, and that approach is called relative frequency approach. And as we know that probability is given by favorable number of cases by total number of cases. The same formula here we have used. And the last approach, that is subjective approach, which is based upon our intelligence, based upon our knowledge, experience. So, out of our experience or intuition or intelligence, sometimes we can predict what is going to happen. So, for example, if we consider a doctor, if we consider a lawyer, if we consider a politician, they are going to predict what could be the reason for the specific ailment. And suppose if a doctor undertakes wishes to or is going to plan an operation for a patient, he can by using his experience or knowledge, intelligence, he can predict that whether that operation is going to be successful or whether it is not going to be successful, whether that patient is to undergo, whether an operation should be planned for that patient or not. So, all such decisions can be taken by the doctors using this subjective approach. So, these are various theories of probability. So, in this lecture, we have understood the term probability and various areas of application of this probability, and next one, various laws and rules of probability, that is probability of an impossible event is 0, and the probability of an event, if it is 1, the event is said to be certain event, and how multiplication theorem, multiplication of probability can be done, and all these things we have understood under the head of laws of probability. And finally, we have also made an attempt to understand various types or approaches to probability, that is relative frequency, classical, and the last one judgmental, that is subjective approach. So, these are the concepts which were discussed in this present lecture. Thank you.